Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Welcome to Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. Hi, I'm Joe Coe, and I'm here today for a special episode of Talking Head Pain. Many of us in the chronic disease community have been discussing an article that was recently published in the Daily Mail, a media source that I consider to be a tabloid or tabloid light. I don't take very seriously, but it has generated a lot of really raw responses and feelings in our community. The title is Addicted to Being Sad. Teenage girls with invisible illnesses known as spoonies post TikToks of themselves crying or in the hospital to generate thousands of likes as experts raise concerns over internet-induced wave of mass anxiety. So as you could see, the title itself is very clickbaity, pulling at our emotions and trying to generate probably revenue for this publication's online ads. And in doing so, it has really impacted our community. I'm joined here by two of my colleagues that live with chronic disease that are tremendous advocates that are doing amazing work to raise awareness, to dispel stigma, and to make sure that people that read articles like this don't feel alone. Because the reality is that if you're marginalized, if you live with a chronic disease, you're going to face a constant attack by people who want us to feel disempowered. For this important discussion, I'm joined with GHLF colleagues who also live with chronic disease. Meet Sarah Shaw, the Senior Manager, BIPOC Community Outreach, and JP Summers, our Patient Advocate and Community Outreach Manager.
It really angered me. I had to step away because I thought I was going to drop my iPad when I was there. I thought I was going to slam it down because, again, here's another barrier we have to overcome on top of what we already have to overcome.
What made you angry about it, particularly?
Well, again, they were taking a jab at teenagers. I feel like when they were mentioning about, they're doing it for likes. I never, ever posted any of my material, my content for likes. I posted it because I wanted to raise awareness and say, this is what's happening to me. This is what I'm going through. I was not doing it for likes. I was doing it because I wanted to raise awareness. And the fact that this article, all the aspects of the article, that they were saying, they're seeking empathy, they're trying to diagnose themselves, and it's like psychologically damaging. It's like, no. And for them to also say that they're acting worse than they really are, that is what angered me. When I'm in pain and the amount of whether I cry or however I handle it, there's no level. There is no level. And it just really upset me. I had to put my iPad down because I thought I was going to drop it. I thought I was going to throw it, to be honest, because it's just one more thing that we have to fight even harder against, that stigma. We're not seeking attention. We are telling our truth.
That's JP Summers that you just heard from, who is a community outreach manager at the Global Healthy Living Foundation. And we actually hit record because in our warm-up, JP was so passionate about this issue that we just dived right in. And really important to hear what JP is saying. I'm also here with Sarah Shaw, who is a colleague too at GHLF. Sarah, when you read the article, how did that make you feel?
I was furious. And also, unfortunately, not surprised as well. I feel like time and time again, the chronic illness community, teenagers, women, are constantly being told that it's on their head, that we're making things up, that, we're doing things for attention. I'm sorry, I have never once, tried to be an attention seeker for living with my migraine, endometriosis, or anxiety. That is not that is not something that I'm gonna, want to post on social media and just get for the likes, or, to the one of the parts in the article that was talking about to convince their doctor to get them a diagnosis. Do you know how hard it is when you live with an invisible illness to get an accurate diagnosis, not only as being a young person, not only being a woman, not only being a part of the queer community, not only being a member of the BIPOC community? it is difficult to get doctors to believe you. And this article is actually making that 10 times worse when they're seeing and reading articles like this, that their patients are just making things up or doing things for light or content. Do you actually think that somebody's going to admit themselves to get in a hospital bed to get attention? Like, it was just, it blew my mind, and the article was extremely ableist, and a bunch of other things targeting young women in general. Like, if anything, the women that are speaking out and sharing their truth are very brave, because I remember what it was like being a younger person, not having a diagnosis yet, and trying to go through all of the noise of trying to figure out what was going on with me. It was a very scary time. And so putting yourself out there on social media is very brave, especially when you live with a chronic illness.
So I'm hearing a lot of anger, which is rightfully placed. What would you tell someone, JP, that has anger? What should they do with this anger around this article?
The way I would go about it is keep going, keep speaking your truth. Don't let anyone define your illness. Don't let anyone make you feel less of a person. I always take my frustration and anger and I turn it into something positive. And after reading that article, I did cool down, because again, I felt personally attacked, not only as a female, but as a caregiver to the son who has a chronic illness. And I actually wish that it wasn't one-sided. It's like they put all these females. It's like, what about the males? My son as a teen, I'm sorry, I'm getting upset right now, but my son as a teen faced so much. Just people were always telling him, toughen up, it can't be that bad. And as his mother, I'm like, you have no idea. He is not faking. He physically cannot sit up because he is in so much pain from chronic migraine. And again, the anger I felt, the frustration, just made me realize why I do what I do as an advocate. But also, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. This article just fueled my desire, and my everything that I do has a purpose, and I'm just not going to let it stop me from sharing my truth, from sharing what I'm experiencing. Because you know what? I've heard from several people, just from one thing I talk about openly has helped them to realize, for one, they're not alone, and that it's okay. It's okay to express yourself, whether it's on social media or in writing. It doesn't matter. Don't stop. Just keep going and let the haters hate.
Okay, Pay. This is bringing up a lot of stuff, and it's interesting. When I read this article, I didn't realize the first time I read it that it was exclusively targeting young women. Even though it was in the title, I went directly to the chronic disease, and it was, attacking people with chronic disease. It's so multi-layered. And I think the point that you bring up shows how sexism and homophobia and racism are all connected. There was a book, Homophobia, Weapon of Sexism, and it talked about how sexism impacts men in a way, because like what you're saying about your son, that he needs to toughen up, he needs to be a man. Those gender roles, that quote unquote masculine identity of being tough, hurts young men and boys, and it delays diagnosis for chronic diseases and all those things. And I know it's something that we've spoken about on Talking Head Pain. So it was really interesting that you brought up that area. I want to turn to Sarah now. Sarah, what are you hearing and feeling from the community that you talk to on a regular basis on social media, through your professional network at GHLF?
I think everyone is tipped off about like the whole situation. If trying to say that nicely, I think they feel disrespected. They feel that the article paints people living with chronic illness in a very, very bad light, especially people that live with invisible illnesses. I think that that's something else that is an important factor here. Something like migraine or MS or other diseases that you can't, are not outwardly being shown is like if you walk into, I know there was someone on Talking Head Pain, if you walk into an emergency room with your hand cut off, you're immediately going to be seen, and your pain is going to be treated and addressed as so. But for these people who live with invisible illnesses, people who are young, people who are women, non-binary, they're not treated with the same respect. And a lot of different people are just as angry as JP are. And if anything, I think it's fueled the fire more, to, at least for me, to encourage people to post more about what they're going through, because you never know what you sharing your truth, you sharing your story, you sharing your experiences, how that's going to affect and help somebody else. I know for me, when I first started off on my journey, I came across a chronic migraine, a young chronic migrainer's blog. And that for me, I was like, oh my gosh, she's young, she's just starting off in her career, and she's also got hit with this long-term illness. And that's what we're doing here at Talking Head Pain as well. I feel like telling our stories, like I wish I had this podcast when I had first started off on my journey, because it would have made me feel so much more or less alone, and that it wasn't all in my head. Like my doctors had once told me, I was told that, it's just anxiety. And like, while I do have anxiety, like my migraines are not anxiety. That is, it wasn't just stress. It wasn't just anxiety. There was an underlying issue. And I think that that's what we need to keep telling people and that's what brought me to advocacy, because I wasn't getting heard. And, this article just drags people living with chronic illness through the mud terribly. And I think that if the person writing the article had taken a step outside and actually spoken to the people living with chronic illness and learned about their experience a little bit more, the article would not have gotten published. The fact that they say that people are doing it for clout is ridiculous.
Really struck a chord. People really, Sarah and JP, it really has hit people. And it's really interesting. And this might be a little controversial of me. And I think this article, personally, clickbait, horrible. We're going to be publishing some more stuff on GHLF on it. You could check out an article that our colleague Zoe Rothblatt published yesterday about how social media does good on Creaky Joins. There's one area in this that I think hasn't really been spoken about, and it's the part where she says experts raise concerns over internet-induced wave of mass anxiety. Now, that is like a horrible way of phrasing it, but I really wanted to think about what if we were taking any negative intention out, what they're trying to say. And I think, if I was to be devil's advocate, that that this part of the article was trying to say that constantly posting negative will make us feel bad. How do we balance the negative and the positive of chronic disease? Because that's what I grappled with as I was thinking about this article, as someone who has shared a lot of negative and a lot of positive. Do you think that there's something there that needs to be explored with the chronic disease community that we missed because of how just horrible this article was in being exploitative of young people and people that are invisibilized?
I think there's a balance. I really do think that there's a true balance. And whereas maybe the person looking at these chronic illness accounts aren't really listening and seeing, because I feel like with every account, at least that I follow, it's a roller coaster ride, right? Living with a chronic illness, you have your highs and you have your lows, but you always have like your community there to support you. And like, I think that there are some really creative content creators out there that are like having, I don't want to say fun with their chronic illness, but like showing the positives of, which is one for me, like the community that comes out of living with a chronic illness. And then sometimes you have to show the reality, such as like insurance barriers and the doctors not believing you, and, difficulty affording your medications or access issues and stuff like that. And I feel like there's a balance that we all have to strike in doing it. Whereas some people, for a certain period, they're going to go through a really, really rough patch. And then there are people who are able to swoop in and help and support them. And I think that it really, really, really depends. But I haven't come across any accounts that it's all just negative. I feel like if anything, them sharing their story is a positive.
That's a really good way to look at it, that these were snapshots in a person's history and story. JP, final words?
So I'll tell you something. The person that wrote this article and anyone that has a negative opinion about people seeking attention needs to follow Creaky Chats, because every single Creaky Chats we do, there's so many people, so many. Either it's people that have that illness or know someone that has that condition, even providers, caregivers, they weigh in. And those conversations are true to form. They are so in depth, and they share every single thing from how they're having obstacles to obtaining, medications, but also how are they feeling? How are they doing? This isn't just, again, for show. This is what we are dealing with, what we're experiencing. And when you see what's going on with each Creaky Chat, you're hearing, again, perspective, and that's true to form. That is authentic. There is no faking on what we're saying, because we are all on the same page. We need community to thrive. We need our community to feel stronger and build us up, because we have people tearing us down, like that article. And when that happens, we just have to band together and be even stronger and fight back, because we are not going to allow someone to define us, because this is something we live with and we're trying to cope with it. And the last thing we need is someone to diminish, how we are as a person. And I, for one, refuse to let someone make me feel less of a person, because I already have to deal with the disability part of it, the physical part, the things I can't physically do from time to time. And I don't need the burden of someone telling me, oh, you're posting pictures for empathy and likes. No, I'm doing it to raise awareness.
Thank you, JP. And for those that don't know, Creaky Chats is our Twitter discussion that's hosted by Creaky Joins, the online community for people with arthritis and related conditions. You can find that by going to Twitter and putting in the hashtag Creaky Chats. And thank you so much, JP, for your words and passion and just energy that you're giving to educate people and to be supportive and a role model. Sarah, any last words from you?
As hard as it is, person that wrote this article probably has not had to deal with a chronic illness. And I say this because I don't fake being sick. I'm half the time I'm faking being well. And so does a lot of people in our chronic illness community. And I think if you took time to actually get to know us, you would see that it's too much work to fake being sick. It's I think that all of these people, I'll repeat again, are some of the bravest and strongest people out there that I know, people within the pre-joints community, within the GHLF community. I think people living with chronic illness are just trying to live their lives. And stuff like this doesn't help not only them trying to live their lives, but also get access to diagnosis and access to resources and stuff like this. Like these articles like these can have detrimental effects. And I just want journalists to think about that the next time that they're writing articles without actually getting to speak to people living with these illnesses. And I want to encourage everyone to keep sharing their stories, to keep sharing their content, to keep writing, to keep posting on social media, because you are not alone and you are most likely affecting somebody in a really positive way by doing that.
I could not agree more. And I think just to wrap this up, what I'm hearing from both of you, the range of emotions from anger to empowerment to not giving up to encouraging folks to continue to share their story, and also how important it is not to take shortcuts. It was made very apparent listening to you both reflecting on this tabloids piece that this writer took a lot of shortcuts. They took shortcuts in how they presented the information. They took shortcuts in how they talked about complex information. They took shortcuts in the clickbaity title, Addicted to Being Sad. They used words that were very charged, that they knew were going to generate a reaction from a segment of the world. And in some respect, they're getting what they wanted. We're talking about it right now. In another, what we have to do is deflate the energy that these folks have. We have to deflate their ability to make us so hurt, because this woman doesn't control us that wrote this article. I hear it from the work that both of you are doing, that we're doing together at GHLF. So this woman has no power over us. Unfortunately, she has a platform, but we do too, which is why we thought we would do this special episode of Talking Head Pain to really just allow us to have space to talk about the rawness of this experience and this article. So thank you, Sarah and JP, for being amazing colleagues at GHLF and partners in this work.
Thank you, Joe, as always.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.